Hi, everyone. It's a full house today, although we can't see everyone this time. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a ton of updates. So I'm not sure if folks have seen the statewide numbers, but since yesterday, an additional 578 Connecticut residents have tested positive, bringing the statewide total to 2,571. In New Haven, we're at 71 confirmed cases. As folks will recall, during the call yesterday, we had an update on that number, so they tend to jump when we get those updates, and I expect that number to be higher than what it actually is right now. 2 public safety officers have tested positive for COVID-19, 1 police officer and 1 firefighter, and they are self-isolating. And those are the only updates I have for today. I don't know if our team wants to add anything, or we should just dive into questions. Does anyone want to add anything?
That's it.
Okay, let's dive into questions. All right, I'm seeing Paul Bass. Gage, usually I can unmute people, but it's not letting me do that now.
Hi, Justin.
I'll add you as a host to do that.
Okay,
How you doing, man? All right.
I'm good.
All right. I had a few questions, but I don't want to hog if other people have questions too.
We can rotate.
Yeah, we went to playgrounds today and did not see people in our own random search on the playgrounds. We didn't see signs up yet or locks. What's the status of the playground ban?
It is active. I think it's taken a little time to get the signs up. I'm surprised that they're not locked. If you could tell me which ones are not locked, I'll send folks out there.
I'll get you that later. Yeah, but we didn't see people. Have you been seeing people abiding? We didn't see people violating it.
So I have heard no complaints today. It's not the nicest day out there, so it doesn't surprise me that it isn't a major issue today. We'll continue to monitor it. I presume as the weather gets better, there'll start to be some tension there.
Should I wait for another question or shoot with another?
Let's do 2 and then we'll dive to someone else. How about that?
Thank you. I was talking to some clergy people today. They're talking about how the big Easter week celebrations are coming up and a lot of pressure on them. And a clergy person from Orange said that their town made it easier for them because the inconsistency of the governor's order that says you shouldn't have more than 5 people gather, but if it's a religious service, you can have 50. And clergy people feel they don't want to have those services. They don't want the pressure because people could die. But without an order saying they can't, it makes it harder. So the guy in Orange said, well, in Orange, they banned even religious services, 5 or under. Have you given more thought? Because I know it's tricky with church and state. Have you given thought to whether you might go further than Lamont and say you don't want 50 people gathering for a religious service and make that an emergency order?
I think we've thought about a lot of different options, and religious gatherings is just one. We have found that by and large, since we have started to do much more proactive outreach to the clergy community, that there haven't been a lot of gatherings, and that the clergy have played a real leadership role in ensuring compliance with this. My sense is that our team has been, we reached out to several clergy leadership to help host a large webinar and continue to proactively engage. And my sense is that's been pretty successful.
Okay, so engagement will do the trick.
What'd you say?
You think engagement's the right way to go, not
Yeah.
rules?
Thanks. If it became a problem, I think we'd revisit it, but our sense is it's not a major problem. I see Mackenzie's raised her hand.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks so much for taking my question. First, I was wondering if you have any updates on the city's position regarding the Yale housing offer, and if you've considered whether you're going to move forth with that for fire and police officers, as well as healthcare professionals. And then my second question related to that is there's been kind of a groundswell of Yale student activism that also involves members of the New Haven community about opening Yale dorms to New Haven residents more generally and specifically the homeless population. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about that, if that's something that you've considered with Yale or other universities, just kind of what your reaction to that proposal is.
Sure. So we have not changed course on housing for police and fire. We're still working with UNH on that and are grateful for their support. We have been in conversations in general with some institutions about finding additional options for the homeless population. We have not been in conversations with Yale on that.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Given that Yale has already begun the process of making those beds available and will have them available at the end of the week, are you considering having conversations with Yale about it or utilizing that space in any way outside of the homeless population?
I think it's helpful to know that there are more options available, and it's good for us to have that option should we need it. One thing that's important to underscore is it takes a long time for us to process these requests. There's logistical issues, there is legal issues, and so we've been in the process with other entities about this. And for us to change course now would be a little bit more difficult, but we're grateful that Yale has opened up these 300 spots as a potential future option. Other questions? Let's go Shayna and then Kyle.
Hey, Mayor, thank you for taking my question. I am just following up with from Friday in regard to housing inmates. I know the first Department of Corrections inmate in Connecticut has tested positive for COVID. Have you changed your position at all as far as what to do with those who are incarcerated in our city, and kind of maybe any conversations that you've had as far as keeping people as safe as possible in those kinds of situations?
No, but and I'm not meaning to give you a hard time because I know it wasn't your piece, but WTNH incorrectly reported that the governor and New Haven have done nothing to change what we're doing on our lockup. That's not accurate. I can't speak for the governor, but I can speak for what we are doing. And the chief of police and I have worked very hard to address some of the concerns that have been raised by the community. Actually, we've been working on those for probably a week before community members submitted a letter to me about their requests. The chief can talk more specifically about what we are doing, but on the high level, we've reduced overall the number of people in our lockup. We've increased the amount of cleaning that's done in the lockup. We have a plan if someone does contract COVID-19. I think that some of the advocacy groups are, their concerns are very real and valid. And we've been working very hard to make sure that we're keeping people safe. I don't know if Chief Reyes, you have anything to add there.
Yeah, the only thing I would underscore is that prior to this pandemic, our averages, per day averages were upwards of 12 to 13 per day. Right now, we are averaging about three people per day in our lockup facility. And all the other points the mayor made.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kyle.
Yes, I had a follow-up question for Chief Reyes and then a separate question. So we did get an email. Someone said that there was someone who tested positive in the New Haven facility. Is that accurate? And there's discussions about moving people out of that facility.
So no, that is not accurate. There hasn't been anyone in our facility to test positive to our knowledge. I think they may have been referring to what Ms. Ferreira referred to in terms of in the DOC, there was a confirmed case, but not in our facility.
Okay. And are you able to elaborate on plans now that there has been someone who tested positive within the police department, and the same for Chief Alston? Just sort of what are staffing plans and contingency plans in case some of our first responders or more they become infected?
Yeah, we have a robust plan in place. We've been working very closely with all of our partners, but especially our health department Right now, we have taken precautions to identify anyone that may have been in contact with the officer. And we have contacted those individuals personally, and a plan of action with the health department has begun. Many of them are self-quarantining at home. That's, probably the most significant aspect of the plan, is to make sure that people are quarantining, we're identifying them early, and we're making sure that we sort of nip it in the bud in terms of spreading it to anyone else. We've been in contact with our personnel to make sure that they're aware of it. And so that's part of our ongoing efforts to make sure that there's communication and collaboration and coordination with the health department. We've been doing that.
And on our side, we do have one that tested positive. We currently have 13 individuals, members of our department here. The others are awaiting tests. That's the frustrating part. The testing labs, getting the test isn't the issue. It is the waiting for the results. Many labs are over. The persons who are deemed exposed, depending on whether they're symptomatic or asymptomatic, are being isolated or self-quarantined. And as I said, it's a fluid situation. We are monitoring our folks every day, twice a day. And as we see changes in their physical well-being, we're making the adjustments on the fly.
That was remarkable, Chief, that I think I actually understood what you said, even though the reception was really bad. So if people didn't understand what the Chief said, it's that 13 individuals in the fire department are currently not at work. Is that correct, Chief? You can just nod if they.
That is correct.
And one of the frustrating points is not the time it takes to get tested, but the time it's been taking to get the test results. Obviously, there's some anxiety for people that don't know what the test results are. And in some cases, they've had to wait 4 or 5 days. And of course, if we want to make sure that we're keeping our firefighters and police officers safe as much as possible. And we'd love for them to come back to work if they do test negative as well. So it's one of the things that we're in conversations with the hospital about how to speed up the processing of the test. And the hospital has been very amenable to working with us.
And how does losing 13 staff impact response? Are we picking up any extra shifts, or how does that work?
Well, several members are picking up additional shifts, obviously, as we replace people off. But I cannot underscore enough how frustrating, and I would just challenge our friends in the press to be responsible and sensitive during a time when someone is at home, either with their family or away from their family, awaiting the results of that test. It is a very trying time for them. I speak to them on the phone. I would just ask you to be sensitive to that in your reporting and in your questions. But insofar as the shifts, we're rotating a lot. My staff's been meeting. We're looking at changing the rotation, the medical rotation. In fact, as soon as I get off this call, we're going to be issuing that order. But also in terms of making sure that we change the work rules. We just put a class on that's supposed to wait 6 months before they can work overtime. We're looking at waiving that almost as soon as I get off this phone call. So I appreciate the question. It is a challenging time for all of us.
Okay.
Other questions?
I'm sorry, one last one. Are any of those officers or firefighters going to be at UNH?
Yes,
Yeah.
Eric,
Oh, go ahead, sir.
are you referring to the ones that tested positive?
Yep.
Yes. When we start to see those results come back in, and the 2 that have tested positive, are any of them using that housing that's available now?
So UNH will not be used for individuals that test positive. It will only be used for healthy firefighters that are asymptomatic and police officers that are asymptomatic, or those individuals that are awaiting testing that may be suspected, so that they can self-isolate away from their families to ensure their family's safety if they so choose.
Okay.
Let's go to Mr. Puglisi.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. Actually, a couple follow-ups here. First, with, guys having to self-isolate in the police department and in the fire department, would there ever be a situation where there might be a plan in place to bring in firefighters and police officers from neighboring towns in case a number of people do test positive?
Defer to the chiefs on the answer to that.
Yeah, and so the reality is that that could happen if we do reach a critical point where a significant amount of the force is immobilized. Then we absolutely would exercise some agreements with our area partners to have them supplement that. I have been in conversation with chiefs from around the region. I can assure you they too are looking for a plan for resources should they deal with a similar issue. But that would happen. We have contingency plans to be able to deal with this within our department. And it would have to reach critical points for that to be implemented. But we do have the ability to do that.
About almost a month and a half ago, our department went through an exercise of identifying essential personnel in anticipation of this getting worse. If we lost 25% of the workforce, what would we do? Obviously, it would involve labor negotiations. It would be change in schedule, staffing. But the fire service has always relied on mutual aid, even when we had multiple alarm fires. But we also have to be concerned with our mutual aid partners experiencing shortages as well. And it's an ongoing conversation throughout the state with the Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs Association. We're all looking at it, but we do know that certain communities will be impacted greater just by their density and just by their demographics, more so than others. So that's a very fluid and ongoing discussion.
And also with the use of these dorms and the potential of somebody contracting this and then passing it, what kind of safety are in these dorms to keep guys positive with COVID-19 and not know it?
Can you repeat the last part of that question? You cut out, Dick.
Oh, sorry, apologies. What kind of safety measures are you putting in place at these dorms to prevent the possible spread of COVID-19 through dorms housed with all first responders?
So that's the very purpose of the dorms, is so that we're not housing people in large groups, so that there will be rooms with bathrooms, in some cases suites with bathrooms, and it may be, depending on how many individuals we house, that there may be one or two individuals in one suite. But the whole point of this plan is to separate individuals with their own bathrooms so that they can self-isolate and not potentially infect someone else.
And part of the plan is to incorporate a routine or a daily cleansing and disinfecting of the dorms, which is part of the agreement that we have with UNH.
And lastly, for me, would these dormitories possibly ever expand to hospital staff as well?
That's not in the plan for UNH, but I understand that there's the state is looking for that option and municipalities to support with that effort. I think this thing is pretty fluid, and that's not been in the discussion with UNH, but there may be a possibility down the road for that.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Mary O'Leary, we can't see you, but usually you have a question. Should I unmute you and just speak? I knew it.
Yes, please.
Go for it.
I'm using my computer, which is really terrible, instead of my husband. So
that's okay. I read your mind.
Thanks. A couple of questions. The 13 firefighters who are waiting to get the results from tests, it sounds like they would be perfect candidates for UNH, but is that agreement still not quite signed?
So we have not finalized things with UNH. That's correct. And it depends on the scenario. When there are public safety officers that have the ability to self-isolate at home, they can choose to do that. We're entertaining the option of using hotels in the meantime, until we get UNH finalized. Chief Alston, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, sir. We've actually had members, and there's an arrangement with an area hotel that if there are certain conditions until the UNH solution is there, that we're going to be able to provide hotel rooms for them. We have a firefighter who's expecting his first child and is very concerned about going in and out of work over the next couple of weeks to make sure that some people are opting to stay with family, but on a case-by-case basis, if you do not have the ability to self-quarantine or self-isolate, then we will most assuredly make those arrangements for you, as long as they're asymptomatic.
I hope that was adequate for you, Mary. If you wanted the chief to repeat it, then
It's, you know, it's hard. His connection is problematic. So what I think I understood is that there's at least one person who has opted for a hotel, and then the rest of the maybe 13 or 12 are self-isolating at home at this point.
Can you try to clarify that, Chief?
Sure. Is it the audio that's breaking up?
Yes.
It's the audio.
Okay. My apologies. I'm having challenges here. I'll talk slower. Of the 13, 4 have tested negative. We're still awaiting the results of 8. There are conditions on a case-by-case basis that we will be offering hotel space for our members who cannot self-isolate or cannot self-quarantine.
So the last part was we're offering hotels to members who cannot self-isolate or self-quarantine. But it sounds like, Chief, no one has taken us up on that offer yet.
That's correct. Only one.
Does that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, I just had one other question. I mean, the governor yesterday, I mean, I guess he has before, but directly addressed the need to break up the homeless shelters or just generally have options for the homeless, and appealing to, I guess, mainly private universities probably, as well as public. Does the weight of that order, does that give the city any greater ability to, I don't know, get bedrooms and get services from the private universities, or is this totally a voluntary on their part?
My understanding is that the governor's order doesn't force the universities to do this. The governor's order forces homeless shelters to decompress. And we understand that the state is working to facilitate many, many more people that are experiencing homeless going into hotel rooms. And we don't have a finalized plan or proposal from the state, but our sense is that that is their strategy to reduce the number of homeless individuals that are living in the same quarters.
All right. Can you tell me, if it was, I think 84 individuals at one point are in hotels. Is that number increased? I guess the fire chief just mentioned that there's one who opted.
That's separate. That's a firefighter. The 84 individuals were homeless individuals experiencing homelessness. And I believe that number is the same as it was several days ago.
Okay. The state hasn't added any more hotel rooms.
No, but we've heard from the state that they're interested in doing that. We're sort of waiting for more clarity around it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Shana.
Hey, Mayor. Just wanted to kind of follow up as far as, you know, is it still the same situation in regard to finding staffing for the career site that we've been discussing?
We don't have any major updates on career.
Okay. All right. And so far, you mentioned 71 cases, but there's only been 1 death so far, correct?
Two deaths, 72 cases.
2 deaths. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had that correctly. And my final question:
72 cases.
Do you have any? You said 72?
71 was yesterday, 72 is today.
Gotcha.
However, again, it's likely that it's more. It's just there's a lag between when we receive the information and when other parties have the information.
But we are up to 2 deaths in New Haven.
Correct.
Okay. My final question: do you know any numbers as far as where the school department is. I received a report, and I'm not sure if we've confirmed that or not, about some school staff in New Haven being exposed to COVID-19. Do you have any information on that?
Mr. Pinto, do you mind chiming in?
I'm sorry, just repeat the question. I'm sorry, I missed as to where we were. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I was just checking to see if anyone can confirm any New Haven Public School staffers that have tested positive for COVID or have been exposed to COVID at all, if you could confirm that.
Okay, we do have as we had confirmed prior, there was a security guard and a custodian. We are doing all the tracking for those, and if anyone in contact with them is being kept out. We did have a receptionist who was suspected, but then at Central Kitchen, but that test came back negative. And we have another person who is at home with an illness, but it does not appear and that it is what's it called, COVID-19 at this point. However, we're continuing to monitor.
All right, thank you.
I saw Kyle with her hand up.
Oh, yes. One final question. Since the 4 firefighters have tested negative, is there a timeline for them returning to work?
Chief?
Yeah, well, we're still going to have them out for the 14 days, see if they've developed any symptoms. We're working with the Board of Health and medical professionals to determine a process of making sure that they're cleared before they return. Obviously, if one is exhibiting symptoms and they're part of a crew, we want to make sure that that crew is isolated to ensure that they themselves have not been infected. So there's a process of doing the contact investigation, contact tracking. So they're part of that process. We're still looking at 14 days out until we can clear them.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Just wanted to note for the record that when you compare my awards closet here behind me to Chief Alston's, I clearly have a lot of work to do. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you probably tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.